Okay, hi everybody.
Hey.
It's like a sleepover. Everyone behave nicely. So,
gosh.
well, we're gonna get started. Thanks for your patience. So, you guys don't know who I am, but I'm Ryan Sands, and I'm a zine maker and a comic book publisher. So I run a small press called Youth in Decline, and we publish comics by Eleanor Davis, Michael DeForge, Sophia Foster Domino, Jillian Tamaki, a few other people. And later this year, we're putting out a collection of personal works and drawings by Rebecca. Mm-hmm. So I can tell by your outfits and your enthusiasm that I don't necessarily have to really introduce Rebecca, but I will anyway. So Rebecca Sugar is a cartoonist. She's a songwriter. She's an animator. She's a showrunner. She's a graduate of SVA, where her final project singles captured the attention of Penn War. Oh, someone's... Okay, don't Snapchat. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, you guys know this, but she joined the team at Adventure Time. She wrote some of my favorite episodes, including Fiona and Cake. She's Marceline's mom. And she wrote a lot of beloved songs for the show, and she was nominated for 3 Emmys. More recently, she's the creator of the show Steven Universe, which is, in my opinion, one of the best cartoons of all time. But more importantly, I think it's one of the best TV shows of any kind on TV right now.
Oh.
So we're going to talk about Steven at the beginning, but we want to take a lot of time, or I want to take a lot of time talking about stuff you don't always see, which is Rebecca's personal comics. So she's the author of the comic Pug Davis, Don't Cry For Me, I'm Already Dead. And an uncompleted comic called Margo in Bed, which hasn't been published, but we're going to show you some drawings and sketches from that comic. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So please help me welcome Rebecca Sugar. That's it. So I'm asking a lot of questions that I care about. Hopefully you guys will think it's interesting too. But so you created the show, and I just heard it was 4th and 5th season renewed. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. So what does a typical week actually look like? You run the show now. What do you actually do?
Well, it's all really about the team. I'm running around. I'm almost never sitting down. I'm usually working on maybe like 8 or 10 episodes at a time. So one will be getting written while another one's getting sound design done on it. While another one, I might be writing a song for one episode while we're storyboarding 4 others. We're always storyboarding 4 at a time because we have 4 storyboard teams. So I'll run into a writing meeting about an episode that's coming up in the future, but then I'll jump into a board pitch of an episode that's being boarded, and then I'll go into the animatic room with an episode that's at animatic stage, and then I'll run downstairs and I'll finish an episode and deliver it. I'm really involved with sound. Like I go to all the mixes where we do sound effects. Since I come from being an animator, I want to be really hands-on with the actual animation, with the actual production. But then I'm like pulled by that stuff. Like I want to really make it, but then I'm always pulled back to the writing because that's the part that really matters. I just said just the other day, like sometimes I can draw on the frames. Like I have all the frames, and there's about 10,000 drawings in every episode. There was just the other day, there was a scene where Greg is throwing a fishing line into the water, and there's supposed to be bait on the hook, but there isn't. So I went in and I drew the bait. That's the piece of animation by me. A very small contribution.
I think I heard that you come in and draw some important scenes. Is that right? Like you'll come in and make sure that the faces are just right. Someone told me on Jailbreak, or maybe on some of the other episodes, that you'll actually come in and hand draw important scenes to get the details just right. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Ruby and Sapphire's fusion dance, I animated that dance.
Oh, wow.
Not each frame, but I did all the keys.
Yep.
The key animation for that. Emmy and Ian Jones-Cordy together animated her slamming down because I really wanted Garnet's hair to go like this. I was like, there has to be a cam shake.
Yeah.
And her hair has to go boom like this. It had to be just a certain way, or it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So when stuff like that, I see that you pulled them up, but I really wanted, there was, in Catch and Release is the last chance we had to do things with Peridot's fingers. So I was like, I want to draw everything I've ever wanted to do with these fingers, because we're not going to get to do this for a while. I made them turn into an arrow to point at the thing, because people would on the crew would kind of be like, oh, how do we deal with her hands, because they don't read
floating and
they don't read as hands, and of course we're cartoonists, so readability is everything. If you have a character make a gesture, they have to go like this, so they have to go like this. You should understand what their hands are doing. So they'd be like, oh, Peridot's fingers. I'd be like, what? No, but they don't have to do that. They can be an arrow. They can make an arrow. They'll go around. They can go behind her head if she's frustrated. They can stick into her hair. She can put it in her mouth like a cigar.
And then you had this amazing thing, and then you gave it away. So you only had a few episodes to like get everything you could out of those fingers.
This was like it was closing in. It's sad, but this is what I do on the weekends, because I really love to draw into the episodes. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it's just because I just really want to draw the characters. I'll do this on like Saturdays and Sundays. My time to do these poses.
And we talked earlier, but I know we're going to talk more about the comics you did before, and you came from the background as an animator. It feels like a different kind of thing nowadays, where there's this expectation that you're not just drawing, but writing it. So can you talk a little bit, did you have an expectation that working in animation meant that being a writer would be such an important part of the role?
Honestly, when I had no idea I'd be getting to do this or be getting to write. My whole plan was like, I'm going to study animation. I want to be some cog. I just want to be near it because I love it so much. And then I'll go home and I'll do independent comics, and that's where I'm going to write, and that's where I'm going to draw. I figured that I would not be creatively fulfilled in my job, but I would have independent comics and I would get to make a lot of stories. And I didn't actually know that the position of storyboarder or that board-driven shows existed. I just really loved animation, and I really wanted to write a bunch of comics. So when I got the job on Adventure Time, and my mind was blown, because I was like, this job, being a storyboard artist for that show, was just everything I'd ever wanted to do. I had no idea I'd get to do something like that. And then getting to make my own show, my first thing I wanted to do was just give other people a chance to do that job of writing and drawing for animation, because as an animation fan, just of animation history, that's how all the best cartoons were made. I didn't think anyone did them that way anymore. I mean, that's how they made Looney Tunes. That's how they made everything that's amazing.
That we love,
artists writing.
And since this is at a comics related show at Mocha Arts Fest, we should talk about, there's a lot of indie cartoonists working on your staff. And a lot of these are friends of ours. There's Lamar Abrams, Katie, Hillary, Helen Jo worked on the show, Angie Wang works on the show. It's a super team that you've assembled. And so I was curious, so much of the show is, your story. How do you make sure that you give these talented people enough of that same leash or rope that you had on Adventure Time to make sure they can tell stories that are personal to them? How do you balance that?
The whole system is set up to do that. What we do is we don't write scripts, we write premises and outlines. And when the storyboarders take those premises and outlines and flesh them out, things that don't work when you draw it, they change it. They make it what they want it to be. If they change it to the point that it ceases to make any sense, they pitch it, and which doesn't happen. Everyone's brilliant. Yeah. They pitch it in a room. We all pitch it in a room, and my entire team of all of those people and my writers, and we all sort of watch it down as someone pitches it, and we talk about it as a group. So nothing gets all the way to being finished without everybody seeing it and weighing in on whether or not everyone's in character, and whether or not the story makes sense, and if this is setting things up for the next thing, because we all know what the next thing's going to be, even though you guys don't.
I don't know yet.
Yes,
we haven't talked about it yet.
So we have to, sometimes we'll be like, oh, well, is this really what we need to say right now, considering 5 episodes from now we're going to be talking about this? So we do it always together.
Are you scary in those pitches? Or is it a friendly environment, or do you think the writers and the storyboard artists, when they come in, are they intimidated? Is it a very critical experience, or is it like a friendly communal?
I think it's really both. As someone who used to board and who would do pitches, pitching is really, it's fun and it's terrifying, because especially if you had a plan that is not the original plan, and you're just like, this is what I really want out of this. I hope everybody's on board, but you have to sell it. Like, you really have to perform, which for someone who's an animator and a comic artist and does not like to perform,
Yes.
because for a shy person, it's horrifying.
And I'm sure the more you perform it, the better chance it has to actually getting carried.
Yes, that's the thing. It's almost like extortion. It's like the idea you want is
Taking
begging you to sell it.
bending them into extroverts in the room.
The more you sell it, the more chance you have of getting it to be the story you want. So, it's an interesting. It's fun, and it's so much like, I mean, when I was like on Adventure Time, we would pin the boards up on the wall. We'd have a ruler. It's like old photos of Termite Terrace. I mean, it's exactly like how people did it, almost 100 years ago. It's so.
Yeah, I saw my friend Calvin Wong works on the show regular show, and I've seen his pitch boards, and it's literally Post-it notes on these giant, massive styrofoam boards, and he's like carrying them down the hallway, and like he looks like a Mad Men salesman or something, and like a madman.
It's very we used to pitch it on the wall, and in which case the stick is a very important tool because you have to brandish it when you really, mean it.
Yeah.
Smack the page, smack the drawing that's important.
Do you do voices when you're pitching? Do you do the voices? No?
I don't.
You don't?
Some people can. I can't.
Okay.
I have two voices, which is small and nervous, and freaking out and nervous, which are the two levels that I have. We pitch right now. We pitch like this. Like we'll have digital boards. So we'll go through. You like really smack the keys. If you really want something to have impact, you'll bang on the table like that. You have to really go for it. I'm going to be selfish because I'm up here and you guys aren't, and I'm going to talk about an episode that I really like. You've talked in interviews about the show being a coming of age story, about your relationship with your brother, and I've had this experience with it where my favorite episodes are actually about the gems and sort of their role and shortcomings as parental figures. And I think this episode made me cry, made my wife cry. And I think it's that thing, I don't know if you guys are old enough to have experienced this, but I read Calvin and Hobbes as a kid, and I always thought his parents were kind of bossy and annoying. And then I reread it recently, and I really deeply relate to the parents more than I relate to Calvin. I feel for them. So and I think one big part of that for me with the show now is the character of Pearl. She's my favorite character. And I was just wondering, thinking about the show in terms of the crystal gems as parental figures or that side of it. Can you talk a little bit, as much as you want, about that part of the show or about Pearl specifically? There's so much.
We'll keep it.
Yeah, I'll try and go quick. I mean, I love how the test came out. I think, I know with my brother, I feel like I always had this sense that I was sort of doing everything wrong, but because I was doing it wrong first, I could tell him, Steven, don't do that. And then I would see him have this sort of happy, like a healthy circle of friends and everything's going great. And I'm like, that's great. It's not like me. That just totally, I'm blowing my high school experience, but Steven's doing it good because I'm telling him what not to do. I think, Pearl especially is, I think I've struggled with some pretty dangerously low self-esteem. And I think I unpack a lot of that through Pearl. And Steven has always really been there for me. As someone I can always count on. So that stuff, the whole end of Rosa Scabbard, I boarded a chunk of that. And that's really about something that he would actually do when I would get really upset. He would just sort of change the subject and do something else or play some video game he knew that I liked, and he wouldn't say anything. He would just do that.
Oh, okay. To draw you into that.
Yeah, to be like, okay, we're just doing this now and then. But I would know this is not what you want to do. You're doing this because it'll cheer me up. And he didn't have to say it, and I didn't have to say it. We would just do something else, and that was just anyway. I'm gonna stop because I'm getting emotional.
No, that's good. That's good. So I was curious, I know there's a lot coming on the show that we want to know about, but we won't ask. But a lot of surprises. And one thing I noticed with Adventure Time and now with Steven Universe is that there's a lot of back history and secrets and Easter eggs and things just built into the fabric of the show in a way that I don't think I remember other shows doing. I don't remember that experience. So I was wondering, how how much of it is planned in advance? And is there like pressure there? Is that a new thing for animation now to have all these threads hidden throughout the show to unveil later as spoilers and whatnot?
I mean, I think, well, especially with Adventure Time, a lot of us sort of came together and started to do that because that's the stuff that we really wanted to do. And then going into Steven, I think people who sort of knew that I was doing that kind of stuff then came together around me for this. So I think, I mean, on the other hand, now that there's a way to sort of keep watching these things over and over, there's like a scrutiny that can happen that I mean, things are not disposable, and I mean, they never were. I've seen every the episode of The Simpsons like a billion times, and can sort of quote everything. But I think now stuff's sort of intended to be, or can be that puzzle if you want it to be. I think the thing is that my team, we all really want it to be.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So I wanna ask. We've touched a nerve in the room. So I know in a lot of the press about the show, there's been a lot of conversations about the depiction of gender roles and depicting, male and female characters. But I think one thing that I was interested in talking about is the importance of depicting queer characters. You said something to me over email I thought was really interesting. You said, I think it's important. You said, people you can't wait until kids have grown up to let them know that queer people exist. And I thought that was a really interesting thought that I'd like to hear a little more on, if you don't mind expanding on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I think there's this idea that is something that applies or should be only discussed with adults. That is completely wrong. And I think when you realize that talking to kids about heteronormativity is just like air that you breathe all the time, it's kind of amazing that that's not true in any other capacity. I think, if you wait to tell queer youth that it matters how they feel or that they are even a person, then it's going to be too late. You have to talk about it. You have to let it be what it gets to be for everyone. I mean, a lot of times I think about sort of fairy tales and Disney movies and the way that love is something that is always discussed with children. And I think also there's this idea that's like, we should represent, queer characters that are adults because there are adults that are queer, and you should know that that's something that is happening in the adult world. But that's not how those films or those stories are told to children. You're told that you should dream about love, about this fulfilling love that you're going to have. It's not
crushes and all of that.
Yeah, like the Prince and Snow White are not like someone's parents. It's something you want to be. That you you are sort of dreaming of a future where you will find happiness. Why shouldn't everyone have that? It's really absurd to think that everyone shouldn't get to have that. It's anyway. I think about that a lot. I think that I would watch these. I loved Disney movies when I was little, and but I never felt like they were me ever. But I loved them as this sort of like other beautiful thing that people like can have.
Yes.
There's something a lot of times when I warm up, when I'm sort of playing music, I like to play So This Is Love from Cinderella, which I think is just a super, super beautiful sequence. Something that, I have never felt like Cinderella. I've never been this blonde in this huge blue dress that could spin and sparkles fly everywhere. That I don't feel like that would ever be me or that ever was me. I just like to look at it. I want one where that's happening to me.
Something for you, yeah.
Yeah. I always warm up with, well, not always, but I could play it if you want. I don't know if that's kosher to perform. Ooh.
Yeah, please.
Let's see if this, will it work?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll see if I can, I sort of do it from memory. I might not even note the right words, but, So this is love. Da 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 da. So this is love. So this is what makes life divine. I'm all aglow. Do 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 do. And now I know the key to all heaven is mine. My heart has wings, da 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 da, and I can fly. I'll touch every star in the sky. So this is the miracle that I've been dreaming of. Da 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 da, da 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 da. So this is love.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Oh. Yeah, well, okay.
It's usually a little louder though when I'm in the moment.
I see people crying in the audience, so we're mission accomplished.
But cool, I've never actually, I think Ian's the only person that's ever heard me play that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make sure we have a lot of time to talk about your personal comics. I have a lot of Stephen questions, but it's the last one I'll ask now, which is I noticed, paying attention, speaking of music, that a lot of the characters are played by famous musicians.
Mm-hmm.
We have Amy Mann, Nicki Minaj, Patti LuPone,
Mm-hmm.
and it dawned on me this morning that if you put a famous musician in a show that has a lot of music, that might imply that they might sing later on the show. Is there any of the people I've mentioned might be singing later on the show, or can you not share that?
Yes. One of the people, but I can't.
I'm guessing now what's happening, but well, okay.
Yes, that's always a dream, and I think the pressure keeps mounting. People are so good, and I'll try and write things that are way outside of my range. Like I'll write things for Dee Dee, and I'll go way up, and I can't do it. Like I'll do my best, and I'll record it, and then when she does it, I'm like, okay, good. That's how it's that's what it's supposed to be. Actually, you know who is an incredible singer that I just wrote something for? Is AJ, who plays Stevani.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Is an amazing singer.
Oh cool. That's okay. Well, that's great. That's fantastic. I was gonna say, my sister-in-law is a Korean American actress, and I noticed looking through the cast list that finding out who the real people are behind a lot of the voices, that like a majority of the characters are voiced by women of color, and I wondered, which is an awesome thing, and I just want to ask you. There's a lot of characters who are depicting diversity in many different ways on the show. How important is it to have actual diverse people behind the show, either in the cast or on the crew? Is that important as well?
It's hugely important. And I think not even, I know you're speaking specifically racially, but also just I think a diversity of experience in general is so important, because that's how all interesting things happen, like creatively, like if you have, I mean, that's like, what is American culture? What is anything? You have to have, like, if you bring people together, I think also on the team, like we're coming from radically different places, in terms of what we like about cartoons, and like trying to find not just a middle ground between what we all like, but actually preserving the things that we all like, and having them coexist in the show, so that we can, we can have like Patti LuPone and Tom Sharpling like in the same show. Dee Dee was coming from being in Miss Saigon. Michaela was coming from being on Barney. That's also part of what's super important to me, is that we're not all, we didn't all start doing this for the same reasons, but I'm interested in everyone's reasons, and I get to learn a lot about people who want things for different reasons than I do.
That's fascinating. Yeah. We put up now some pages from some of your early comics that you scanned for me. Some of you may have seen some of these online. I wanted to talk first about this comic, Don't Cry For Me, I'm Already Dead. Well, when did you make this comic?
I think, I I think it was 2009, 2008.
Okay.
It was between my third and my fourth year of college before I made my at SVA.
That's great.
Um,
I love this comic. We were talking over email beforehand, and you referenced something I hadn't thought about since college, which was the philosopher Roland Barthes. And you mentioned his concept of the image repertoire. It's a series of images that someone associates with their lover or shared visual experiences. And you talked about how it's related to comics. And I think in this comic, these two characters relate to each other through Simpsons quotes.
yes.
And so for folks who haven't seen it, there's an interesting relationship between these friends, and then something tragic happens, and Simpsons as a shared experience, as part of their image repertoire between each other, becomes a potent part of it. I wanted to show you a comic that's by a cartoonist, an up-and-coming cartoonist who's only 19 years old, that I really like, named Tilly Walden. I don't know if Rebecca had seen this before today, but for folks who haven't seen this, this is a comic about two young characters interacting with your show. I don't want to make you emotional, but can you talk a little bit more about Don't Cry for Me, I'm Already Dead, and image repertoire, and then also perhaps reflect on the fact that now your own work is becoming part of other people's image repertoire?
It's very overwhelming. I think. I had the experience as a humongo comic nerd of falling in love with comics and the people who made them, and cartoons and the people who made them, and feeling like it was a really powerful thing, but also understanding in the back of my brain that no, it's stupid because it's just cartoons, and everyone would roll your eyes at the idea that what you're feeling is like this powerful love for this thing or this person that you don't even know. When I heard this idea of I think with the Simpsons comic, if you haven't seen it, which it's not many people have read it, there's actually only 30 like hard copies that exist. I scanned this out of like the only one I have left. The idea is that these brothers quote the Simpsons all the time, and then one of them gets in a car accident and has severe sort of frontal brain damage, but he can still quote the Simpsons, so their interactions have not actually changed that much, because the other one visits him in the hospital and realizes they can still talk through Simpsons quotes. And to me, that kind of stuff is interesting because it was through comics and cartoons that I made so many of my friendships. It had so much to do with my relationship with my brother. And I could not sort of ignore the importance of that, or really write it off, even though I knew I was like supposed to. Like I knew it was supposed to be sort of ridiculous that these things are what mattered so much to me. When I heard about this concept of the image and the image repertoire, and this idea that when you fall in love with someone, you don't actually fall in love with them because you can't really know the entirety of a person, but you fall in love with a series of images that you associate with that person. I suddenly understood why I just like felt this love for people who had made my favorite comics, because I was like, I have an image repertoire with you. I associate these images, which I love, and this experience of internalizing them, which I loved, with a person that I don't even know. And the really tricky part is that when I meet them, they have no image repertoire for me. Yeah. So it's just like, sorry that I'm in love with you. But it's real. I mean, it's like a really real thing. Yeah. Sure. I think in terms of these image repertoires, I think the interesting thing, that's sort of for me and another person, but also between people, having something like a cartoon or a comic be a shared experience and actually slip into someone else's image repertoire with another person is also really interesting to me, because it becomes part of your love for that person and your love for yourself, which I think is as real and powerful as anything that could be in any image repertoire, and any part of anyone's love, which is why it's sort of really overwhelming, something like that this could be a part of somebody's experience. I think a lot about how when, if there's a certain point in your life when something is happening and something happens to be playing on the radio, and if it's like a dissonant, like if the song is like trash, then it's like such a shame because like you're like, oh, this really important thing is happening, and ugh, I hate this song. My life sucks. But if it's like this like really, something really beautiful, it becomes like tied to this moment forever. So I would think about the show a little like, on the one hand, sort of, it could almost be anything because it's going to be on in the background and it's going to be a part of someone's life just by being there. But if it's a beautiful song, if it's something that actually is meaningful, in the way that can be, that can really change sort of a moment in time if there's something playing in the background that is beautiful.
Most of my important moments were not beautiful things. They were just tacky songs, but I love them fiercely and protect them for exactly the reason you're describing.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, it could be anything, but I don't want it to be anything. I want it to be the thing that I want it to be, a beautiful thing,
Yes, of course.
or an interesting thing.
Yeah. That's great. So, if you don't mind, we're going to show and talk a little bit about the comic Margo in Bed. So I think it's probably the most different from the things that some of the fans know about your work through Steven and the other shows. So you sent me some pages that we'll show, and we've talked about it a little bit. And I was actually really surprised. At first, I thought, oh my gosh, this looks so different. Like, did Rebecca draw this? It's amazing. But
they're strange
and very strange, but also just very different from I think the Steven visuals that I'm used to. But then I was looking through your Tumblr. Sorry, I went deep into the Tumblr, and I found some of these older sketches that were from when you were, I assume, working on the pitch or the pilot for the original Steven show, and there was a connection in a way in the line work and the details to some of this later work. So I was wondering, I see some of the DNA in these sketches here. So here's some of the drawings that you shared with me. Is this your natural style? Is this true Rebecca Sugar style? Or what is this work, and how does it relate to sort of your other things?
I mean, I think there's really, it's hard to say. I think there's no such thing really. I don't really believe in a natural style. I think that, a person's style. Well, I'm popping my peas. A person's style, is who they are, and if it's not, then it's phony. I mean, it's your style is your personality. I think when I was working on this, I was really trying to work on something. I would work through something, figure something out. I think at the time, in comics, I never drew women. And one of the things I was determined to do with this was sort of learn how to do that. I was also really interested in Klimt's line drawings, and I wanted to learn about that. And I wasn't super good at background, so I was really trying to sort of grid everything out. And I was interested in all these sort of old odalisque paintings, which I was studying, some of those ended up being incorporated to like the house in Steven. There's architecture from a lot of things I was referencing for this at the time. But I was also working on Adventure Time while I was doing this, so I wanted to do just some high detail stuff that I couldn't do for animation because you could never animate this. And just study. I just really wanted to study. And I redid every page of this like 3 times. And I don't even remember what the words were going to be. Sure. Because I didn't write them down anywhere. I just was going to remember. These are all from like 2010. But I was just trying to figure stuff out. I didn't have a way that I drew at the time.
I have a few friends who are cartoonists, like Lisa Hannawalt and Sophia Foster-Domino, and they've joked or actually done projects where they purposely try to make a story about a thing they are not good at drawing or not comfortable. Yeah. And they were like, let's do a story where it's limousines going up and down a spiral staircase.
Yes.
Or like, I only like drawing trees and girls. Let me have a thing where it's guys fighting in an office building. Yes. Just to force yourself to learn to tell that story or get it into your visual vocabulary.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. There was my brother did a comic once called Nightmare in Birdland, and it was about this person who goes to Birdland, and there were all these birds, and I'd never seen him draw a bird in his life. He did it like in a weekend, and I was like, why did you do this comic about birds? Yeah. And he's like, I didn't know how to draw birds. Now I do. In a day and a half, he just gave himself this skill, and it blew my mind. I was just like, that's totally why you should do a project. Just pick a thing you don't know how to do, and literally in a day he knew how to do it. It's so simple.
And do you mind me asking, like, what do you think you'll revisit this story or a story related to this when you have time? Which I don't imagine you have a lot of time, but
I think I don't think I can go back to this one. Although this is
Yeah.
the proto Lapis. This character would become basically Lapis. Although the skirt thing she's got would become opaque.
Sure.
And
I see.
this, I mean, it's a story about like emotional manipulation, which ended up being a huge part
Interesting.
of Lapis's character.
Sure.
It's yeah, I don't think I could go back, but I learned a lot from trying to do it. I was just I was obsessive when I was doing it. It wasn't helping me out. I was learning a lot, but I think I was kind of going deep into a hole of just studying and studying and studying
You can just
different parts of
feel-
people's bodies.
There's like a violent energy coming off of some of the sequences, which is just really, you can feel it sizzling when you're looking at it.
Yeah, I was
Even-
working through I was working through a bad breakup. That was actually many years in the past at the time I was doing this, so I was sort of looking back on
Reflecting
it,
on it.
yeah, and trying to figure out how to talk about it.
I wanted to, we still have, they told us we can go over a little bit, but I still want to make sure we move along to this comic, which I'm not sure if people have seen Pug Davis.
Uh-huh.
I read a bits of it. I don't have my own copy.
Oh, I'll give you one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No. I wasn't fishing for one, but thanks.
Uh-huh.
But can you talk a little bit about this comic? In many ways, it's an interesting genre riff, kind of like a different sort of adventure.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking and working on when you were doing this comic, and sort of how do you feel about it now, looking back?
I mean, I had done a lot of other stuff. My first comic ever was, not ever. I had done, I think 3 comics before that. But I did a comic called Margo in Dread, which is Margo in Bed was supposed to be a sequel to Margo in Dread, which is sort of, actually in a lot of ways, Margo in Dread is like a proto Stephen, because it's about a kid who helps a bunch of teenagers with their problems.
Interesting.
But then after that, I'd done a lot of this sort of interpersonal, light, fluffy stuff, and I was like, I want to do like a pulpy space thing. I just want to do it. I was really into The Goon and Hellboy and Earthworm Jim, and it's just.
Yeah.
And so I took a crack at it, although it just ended up also being about interpersonal, sort of like this friendship between the space dog and this gay astronaut. That it was really. I think I figured out what I really did want to do, and I think there was something I sort of learned from this that. I ended up carrying over to Stephen, which is that they spend a lot of time in this comic talking about how much they fight, but they don't actually fight that much. A lot of it is just them talking to each other about sort of how they feel about each other and hurting each other's feelings. But I liked doing that in the context of this pulp space adventure. And I think early on, Stephen was very fantasy, but as it became more sci-fi, I came all the way back to all the things that I liked about Pug. This is like an earlier page. I was also using this to like just study a lot of caricature. Like this guy is supposed to be like with the curly hair is supposed to be like this comedian Resortes, and the shapeshifter who seduces the blouse was like a mix of Tony Curtis and Sandra Oh, because I thought they were both incredibly attractive people.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, I'll do them both. This one hyper beautiful character. I don't know if it really reads. I was also sort of learning how to draw things at this point. I would spend forever on the inks. I would like spend a night just inking Blouse's hair. And the sun would come up and I'd be done with his hair and nothing else would be inked.
It's a great reminder for people who are learning, is like, you don't just become good at the thing, you have to actually make comics along the way to actually learn how to be a cartoonist.
Yeah.
It's a great reminder for everybody who's interested in doing it themselves. Is the best thing you can do is actually just start making the comics you want to see, and you'll figure it out along the way, maybe. So I think we have time for one more of my questions, and then we'll see if we have time for a couple questions, maybe, depending on if they give me the nod or not. Oh, good. Okay. So this is from your student short. Is that right? Okay. And one last thing I wanted to ask you about. We had been talking earlier about sort of, in some ways I think of animation as like the big show. You get to control sort of and play with sound, light, movement, feels very like all powerful in a way. You get to have a lot of control. But in many ways, comics, you were saying, and I agree with, are even more powerful. And one thing you mentioned was just that in animation, unfortunately, that time is literal. And then in comics, you can play a lot more with time. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's something that I love about animation as a control freak. I love the huge amount of control you get over everything, music and sound, color, motion, and everything playing out frame by frame in real time. You have control over everything, and I always loved that. I always was so excited about that. But I think that the thing about comics is that there's something interactive that happens when you don't have a lot of those elements. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I've been writing poetry also. Thinking about, I love the power of ambiguity. I think that there's something that's really frustrating about ambiguity because you're supposed to want everything. You're supposed to want to have everything, know what everything means. But when you don't quite know what something means, there's something that happens between the two people that are experiencing that thing, which is that it becomes this place where you have to meet part way, and it can mean something different to that person than it means to you, and it's actually supposed to. With animation, I mean, I still try to do that in the stories that I write, but visually, that doesn't happen because I'm very, very literally, you're looking at everything that's going on. With a comic page, how you're like experiencing the flow of time is based on the composition of that page. How interesting you're able to make something. If you make a panel that's so great looking that you have to stop and stare at it for like 20 seconds, you've just manipulated time, you know? And if somebody doesn't care to do that, they've just lost the point of what you were trying to do. And that's, you know, but if they do, then, I mean, your experience of it is going to be slightly different.
It's like a subjective reality.
Yeah. But I think I also like the challenge of really trying to convey, like, you know, or just using, like, when you hit the end of a page, you know, are you trying to make someone rush to the next page? Are you trying to make them stop? I mean, you can do that with composition. You can throw a tiny little figure into a huge panel and make it feel like loneliness. I mean, I can make things feel like loneliness in the show because people will be like, "Oh, I'm so lonely," or you'll see them get, or you know, and you can hear it in their voice.
Music,
You can hear it in the music. Yeah. But in a comic page, you could show someone fall into obscurity in the bottom of a page in a borderless panel where they have entered a realm on that page where nothing actually exists, and you'll feel the nothingness of the world, and because of the way that it's drawn. I can't do that in animation. It's not, compositionally, it's very different.
Well, and I was just wondering, for the book that we're doing together, do you have any idea where it's going to go? I'm not asking for the audience. This is an editor check-in.
Well, I'm keeping it really, the thing that's so strange is that the show, and I was talking to you about this too, like the show feels so much like personal work to me, that not working on the show and sitting down to draw something feels less personal than sitting down on the weekends to draw poses for the characters on the show. I mean, the characters on the show are like so important to me, and it took a lot of time for me to sort of build them, and also they have to do with my relationship with everyone who's working on the show, and that's my life. I mean, that's my whole life. So I've sort of been, I mean, I've been writing poetry, which I would like to share. It's very ambiguous. I mean, not right now, but I'll publish it.
Do slam poetry right now.
I have it on my phone. You know, it's weird because I actually have I have notes for the show on my, here, wait, hold on. All right, I'm actually gonna pull this out. I wasn't planning to do this, but like I have notes for the show, and I'll forget what are poems and what are notes I made for changes to do on the show because I made them so fast.
It's like esoteric.
Yeah, like this is just note. It says, look, even if she's not going to the, and then there's nothing else. like these half-finished thoughts, and I'll be like, oh, is that? I can't remember if that's a poem or that's something I forgot to finish writing. Let's see. Today's Island. I think that was actually, it was corrected spelling. Yeah. Oh, here's one. This one just says clarity on stoplight, running. Big, not exactly a citizen. Cut, we need music. These were notes.
Scat puns.
But I'm like, was that? No, those were notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be a shopping list. We're not sure about.
No, this one's a poem. This one's a poem.
I couldn't see it.
It's called 910. Cream curtain, cat noise. Elysian Park birds have the morning news. I'm glad the world is going on, but I'm not interested. That's a poem and not notes. Stuff like that is what I think I've been using it to sort of ground myself in moments of time because I'll forget to sort of exist while I'm working on the show. And that I've been drawing dancers, but I don't really draw them like this anymore because I've gotten so used to going simpler. And I've been so inspired. Like I was just working on something with, I was working on The Answer. There's a children's book of The Answer that I've been working on. And I'm working on it with Ellie Minchalka, my former art director, and Tiffany Ford, my former colorist. And they're brilliant. And they just do these amazing figurative drawings that were so simple and powerful. And I just look at this stuff. I'm like, it's so busy. I want to do something that is like so simple. I think I've gotten so interested in that. And it's funny because when you draw something really complicated, I think it tends to look very impressive. When you draw something really simple, not so much. But I think it's so much harder to draw something simple. Yes. It requires decisiveness. You have to know what's important and what's not. And so I think, when you look at something and you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. And it is that thing. It's like perspective. If you draw something with perfect perspective, nobody will care or notice because it just looks like that would look. Yeah. But if you skew it, everyone's like, oh my God, the perspective is amazing. But it's not. Actually, it's wrong. You're noticing it because it's wrong. If you're noticing perspective and you're thinking, wow, it's so impressive, there's a good chance that it's just wrong, which is not bad. I think actually it was fun when I figured that out because I was like, I'm just going to start making stuff wrong on purpose when I want it to feel impressive.
Yeah. I studied letterpress, and like the way you're supposed to do it, the old way that letterpress worked, was that you wouldn't see the impression on the paper if you had done a good job. But now, like, to charge $7 for a greeting card that you made, they want to see the letterpress. And so like the hardcore letterpress like gurus, like, that is not the right way to print, but people think that that's what letterpress should be. So they're impressed by doing it wrong.
Yeah. It's dissonance. Yeah. I love this, actually. I mean, like, that's the thing. I think what it is so exciting to me, which is that there's sort of consonance and dissonance. If you do everything correctly, what you will make is quite boring because there will be nothing wrong with it. You could make something that is just the lightest, happiest, most perfect piece of music with nothing out of place in it, and it'll feel good, and then it'll be gone, and you won't remember it, because there will be nothing that stuck out. But being able to control what is wrong on purpose to create dissonance, so that you will notice someone will notice what they should notice, because that is something I've gotten really, really interested in. As a control freak, it's really exciting to me to know how to do it, because I think, especially when you're learning to draw, I think early on the idea is like everything should be right. I did this thing wrong, but it should be right. Or then people will come in and say, no, but it's cool that this was wrong, and there'll be like a lot of debate, like, is it, oh, look at that torso, it's so messed up. And then I'll be like, well, I think it looks good, and like fighting over that, and like, oh, but it's sort of incorrect. But then it's like when you get to the point where you can do everything right, so you can start to do things wrong deliberately so that they have impact. That's when it becomes like skill and not mistakes.
So I know we already pushed past the time. I think, do we have time?
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's a good thing, I think. But we have time for a couple questions, so I'm going to arbitrarily pick them. Please don't be mad at me. You, sir, there. Ask a good one.
So in Steven Universe, I noticed that there are a lot of little scenes and little references to like other works. So I was wondering what kind of like other cartoons have influenced the way a lot of visual elements in the show are presented.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
The sort of references we have to other media. Yeah, I think because we're all big fans, it's really hard to, and because it's been such a part of everything that we love, I think a lot of people on the show feel like me, where we have this image repertoire that we associate with childhood and love and thinking that something is really, really cool. And we all want to put Ava references into everything. So we do. For this scene, actually, it's cool that you have this up because we were, I think sort of like the Cinderella thing, like we were all thinking about Sleeping Beauty, and we really wanted to call to sort of just this dream of love that's sort of obscured and close but far away, and you don't really know how to recognize it yet, but you do. I think the show is a pastiche of a lot of different ideas, so I try not to shy away from like letting it be that pastiche. Ian Jones-Cordy, who ran the show with me for a long time, really believes in this idea of kind of using ideas, like a lot of people would want to avoid things that are in other things because he want to make something totally original, but he had this philosophy of using things that people recognize as stepping stones, as building blocks, so that you have a foundation that you recognize and then can stand on top of that and move to a new idea. I think that that's really exciting.
What should I do?
You were saying earlier how you were fans of things and you were like in love with these creators because of what they created, not necessarily who they were as people. And you probably have people who experience that with you now with your work. So how do you deal with people who are just like, oh my God, I love you, and you're just like, I don't know.
That's a good question.
I mean, I that's the thing. I appreciate it very much because I totally understand. I really think it's great that I shared an image repertoire with people, and it makes me want, especially like when people come to me and they say, I want to do this and I want to make comics, it makes me like really yearn to see that person's work because I want the image repertoire to go both ways. I don't want this to be a stranger that's scaring me. I want to know what they think. I want to know what they're interested in. So I relate to it a lot.
There's someone with glasses in the back there. Yes, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
So you talked about the past, you've talked about the present, you just got renewed for a whole bunch of seasons. How do you actually prepare for future? Because there's always going to be future projects. How do you prepare for long-term career, long-term goals, long-term projects after Steven, even though, we all want Steven.
Steven won't hit.
There forever.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, how do I plan for what I'll do after Steven / my career / the future? I think about it. I'm so entrenched in Steven right now. It's very hard to think about that, and I'm trying to sort of bring my head up out of the water, and write poems and do drawings and things that are something else, just so I can still feel like I am a person that has any sort of life, creative. I mean, but I have so much. This is why it gets so muddy for me, because I'm like this. Everything feels so personal and creative to me. I just feel like I'm just spinning out kind of everything I have. But I know, I think, I'm hoping that I'll be very quick on my feet. That when the time comes up, I will have something else I can pull out. I really want to do more Pug. I really miss working on Pug. I miss the blouse because he was a really fun character to write. He was like if Pearl wasn't a liar. He's sweet and innocent, but he's just as like neurotic, and I miss writing for him. Whoa.
Oh,
Is
that was an actual boat.
Yeah. Oh. It's a shofar.
I thought it was like punishment for
going long.
for saying something about Pearl.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll. Okay. You back there with the red hair? Yeah. All right. Sorry, guys.
Hi. I actually went to SBA for 2 years. Unfortunately, I had to stop, but that's not gonna, stop me from what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous.
It's okay.
It's totally cool.
You have any advice? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Comics. Yes. Draw comics, make comics, write comics. And every time you write and make a new comic, try to make it a new thing you want to learn. I mean, I really got, when Steven did Nightmare in Birdland, that was like an epiphany for me. That was like, oh, you just pick something you want to be able to do, make a comic about it and do it. And comics were so helpful to me for doing what I'm doing now. I say comics and films, but I feel like comics most of all.
Comics are free to make.
Yeah. No one can stop you from making them. Also, probably no one will be interested either, but no one can stop you. People were amazingly not interested in my comics. I think it was funny. Like Ian, people were very interested in his comic, and he had this whole experience of sort of having fans and knowing that. And I was like, I was just terrible at promoting myself and my work, and I didn't want to because I wasn't sure if it was even good yet. So it's just like, use them as tools for practice. Try to make them the best thing they can be. And once you finish a page, just like go to the next page and make that page better. And then when you finish that issue, just start the next book and be like, that's going to look better. Oh, and don't get stuck deciding like it looks like this, so I have to keep it consistently looking like this. The second there's some aspect of it that is just like, why was I drawing blank like that? Just stop drawing it like that and start drawing it like something else and let it be weird. Because it's better to let it get better. And when I look at stuff that is like, hey, I figured out my thing and I'm just going to do that thing over and over and over again, it just like bores the hell out of me. But when I see a thing that's like somebody that's really looking for something, like, and the first page doesn't look like the third page, doesn't look like the 30th page, because it's like they're working through what they think is good, that's so exciting to me. I want to see stuff change. I want to do that with it's interesting because I'm trying to do that with the show, which is like this very huge project with a ton of people working on it, but I want to be better as a storyteller, and I wanted to let the characters look different when we decided to draw them differently. If we figured out a way that they could be better, that's part of why I like that when they die, they come back looking different. I wanted to build in a safety net, so it's like as soon as we figured out something that was tough to draw, like, well, let's just kill him, and we can bring him back.
And I was just gonna say for the person who asked.
Yes.
So I met Rebecca because we traded zines like many years ago. I met Jillian Tamaki because we traded zines. So come by my table. Zines, and not jeans. That'd be weird. Zines. But I was gonna say to the person who asked, come by our table and trade zines with us, please.
Yes.
I will trade zines with you if you come and bring a mini comic. So we have time for one more question. You right there. Yeah, you. Yeah, this time.
So there are a lot of popular shows out like Rick and Morty and Gravity Falls. Woo! I was wondering if at any point you were wondering if you could or if you want to or would be able to make it work like Gravity Falls or Rick and Morty or all those other shows.
Make it work.
Like a crossover, like
Oh.
or could you make it work? Like are there any shows like that?
I certainly.
Grandpa, so.
It would take a real miracle to cross over with the Disney show that ended. But I mean, of course, I'd love to. I mean, I love them as people, and I think they're totally incredible. Those shows are incredible. Incredible people are working on them. I mean, I'm just in awe. I think technically, I can't at all. But I love those shows. I love.
People are writing fan fiction live on stage. We can't. Okay, so that's unfortunately all the time we have for questions today. Oh,
I'd just like to say one thing.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all so much for being here. I especially want to thank Rebecca for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Ryan for moderating this conversation. You guys have been so awesome today. I need you to do one more awesome thing after we thank Rebecca for being here today, which we're going to do in a
Not
second.
yet,
I just need everyone to just kind of chill out because Rebecca needs to get over to the Mocha space. She will be signing stuff at the Forbidden Planet booth. Okay? So if everyone could just stay in place until Rebecca out there. Because that way, they're going to be able to get over to Forbidden Planet ahead of you to set up, and then she'll be there signing some stuff. And you can, if you have something you want to get signed, that's the place that's going to happen.
So stay still for a moment. But before we end, can everyone help me and join me in thanking Rebecca for her time? Thank you, Rebecca.